Robert Parsons is our chief foreign editor. He joins us now for more on this story. Rob, good evening to you. It only seems to me like yesterday that this happened. It's so vivid in the mind, isn't it? How do you think it has changed France, what happened 5 years ago?
Well, in the security sense, Mark, an awful lot has changed. The government has become much more, I suppose I can say, proactive in the fight against terror, and also much more active in sharing information with European Union security agencies and also globally as well. One of the criticisms that was leveled against the reaction, both in Belgium and in France, to what happened at the Bataclan and the rest of that night, was that information wasn't properly shared between security agencies. It does appear that an awful lot has changed in the intervening years. And we haven't seen, leaving aside, of course, the July 2016 dreadful attack in Nice, which killed 80 people. But since that attack, we haven't seen anything like the scale of atrocity that we witnessed in that awful period. There have been attacks by people claiming to be representing the Islamic State organization, but they've mostly been lone wolf attacks, knife attacks for the most part, of the kind that we have seen in France over the last few weeks or so. The murder and decapitation of Samuel Paty, for instance, the attack on the church in Nice, and also the attack on the former offices of Charlie Hebdo in Paris. So I think what the government is trying to do now is, first of all, that cooperation European-wide, globally, much more attention to what goes on the internet, for instance, but also a program of de-radicalization, trying to make a distinction between radical Islam, the scourge of radical Islamism, and ordinary Islam, ordinary Muslims going about their daily lives. A distinction that, for instance, made also by Sebastian Kurz, Chancellor of Austria, who in Vienna, which had just been attacked by Islamic State operatives, called it a struggle between civilization and barbarity. That, I think, is the sort of distinction that is trying to be made by the authorities in France. It's come in for a lot of criticism, though, externally, from Prime Minister of Pakistan, for instance, Imran Khan, from the President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who suggested that what is being done in France is the equivalent to a lynching campaign against Muslims, equivalent to what was carried out by the Nazis in Germany during World War II. And from within France, Marine Le Pen has suggested that the French government is simply not doing enough, that it's almost capitulation in the face of this threat. She is trying to make political capital out of it. So, in a sense, the French authorities are caught between those two pillars, but are trying to pursue this approach of de-radicalization.
Rob, on a human level, on a day-to-day level, you live and work in Paris. We live, not quite neighbours, but obviously within the same vicinity. I'm wondering, sort of, in your perception, is Paris the same? COVID aside, is Paris the same since 2015?
That's a difficult one to answer, really, Mark. But I think it is essentially the same. I think people, the strength really of the response in France and in particular in Paris has been not to let it affect people's lives. To say we are not going to be living in a constant atmosphere of fear as a consequence of this. Because that, of course, is what the people who carried out these attacks wanted. They wanted that, and they wanted ordinary people in France to become fiercely anti-Islamic, to see Muslims in France as scapegoats. And I don't really feel that has happened. There has been an attempt by the right wing in France to do that, to scapegoat the majority of Muslims in France, to make them all in some way responsible for the horrors of Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State organization, and so on and so forth. But I don't think that French people have fallen for that at all. I think they're quite capable of making a distinction between ordinary Muslims who are French citizens and go about their lives just like everybody else here, and those on the fringes who are a threat to any society.
Robert Parsons, our Chief Foreign Editor, thank you very much, sir, for joining us.